We've got a lot to unpack today in R. Kelly's appeal, so buckle up. His lawyers are highlighting major issues with the government's case, and let me tell you, the government's case was a total mess from the get-go. They tried to pin R. Kelly as the leader of a criminal enterprise, but the only person they could name in the indictment was R. Kelly himself. If that doesn't scream shaky case, I don't know what does. First up, out of the gate, it was clear that the RICO prosecution against R. Kelly was suspect. The only person named in the indictment was R. Kelly himself. This raises the question, if the government lacks evidence to indict any other member of an alleged enterprise, is it a good sign that no RICO enterprise exists? Here's a head-scratcher for you. In the R. Kelly trial, the government tried to paint him as both the leader of a criminal enterprise and the only person who conducted its affairs. It's like saying that a person can associate with themselves. It just doesn't make sense. The government couldn't even distinguish between R. Kelly and the enterprise, which is like saying one man can be a whole army. It's like saying one person can be the puppet and the puppet master at the same time. It just doesn't make sense. As it turns out, the government couldn't prove that R. Kelly was any different from the alleged enterprise, which is a clear violation of his rights. If they can't differentiate between the individual and the alleged enterprise, then how can they possibly prove that a criminal enterprise even exists? The fact that no other members of the so-called enterprise were named in the indictment is a red flag that the government's case was built on shaky grounds. Here's the real kicker. The appeal has exposed the government's sneaky tactic of charging R. Kelly with RICO as a way to bypass the statute of limitations. It's like they were admitting anything to the court just to keep the case alive. Turns out the prosecutors has been exposed for bringing up all sorts of uncharged bad acts in court, which means that people who weren't even part of the case were taking the stands to trash R. Kelly. Talk about low blows. It's like the government was trying to pile on as many accusations as possible, whether they were relevant to the case or not. And let's be real, having people testify against you who weren't even part of the case is pretty shady. The government's tactics were all just a way to make R. Kelly look bad in the eyes of the jury. I mean, how is he supposed to defend himself against claims that aren't even part of the official charges? And having a bunch of people take the stand to trash him to the jury who aren't connected to the case just to make him look guilty. The appeal went on to expose the government for charging R. Kelly with a law that'd been repealed, so they convicted Kelly under a law that don't exist no more. First they got shaky RICO charges, now invalid health code charges. Seem they grasped to make anything stick. The California Public Health Code that the government contends R. Kelly violated was repealed by the California legislature and was inoperative at the time of his prosecution. Are you telling me the government convicted him under a law that didn't even exist anymore? What an absolute mess. The actual health code the prosecution claimed he violated had already been gotten rid of by the time they charged him, and they still went through with the prosecution anyways? R. Kelly didn't stand a chance with that kind of see-you-in-jail determination working against him. Using a repealed law against R. Kelly is a clear violation of his constitutional rights. The government is supposed to follow the law and use only the laws that are in force. The use of a repealed law against R. Kelly shows that the government was willing to use any means necessary to secure a conviction. This is a clear abuse of power. To make matters worse, R. Kelly is decidedly the only person who has been charged with violating these laws without actually infecting the alleged accusers with an infectious disease. So he may not be the only person in history charged with violating the Federal Mann Act based on alleged minor violations of state health laws. But also he's the only one convicted without actually infecting anyone with a disease. That's wild. The fact they going so hard when he ain't even managed to spread no illness shows they was dead set on getting him. They saw an opportunity to make an example and ran with it. I know it goes against all common sense to convict somebody of a health violation when the accusers ain't catch nothing at all. But they saw him famous and Me Too movement enemy number one and said, "This one's going down. Evidence be damned, the straight-up injustice." This is a clear indication that the prosecutors were more interested in securing a conviction than finding the truth. It's shocking that the prosecutors not only enhanced charges against R. Kelly from a misdemeanor offense to a federal offense, which is unheard of, but also all while knowing that he didn't even infect the accusers with an infectious disease.